the Nazis began World War II and just before the Holocaust. Nonetheless, the Jews sided with the Brits, the Arabs sided with Hitler. In 1948,
the Jews sided with the Brits and the Arabs sided with Hitler is a funny way to cover this. Oh my God. Does anyone have the link for Ben Shabibi? You're being lied to about Israel.
The things that we have been seeing on our screens from Hamas are atrocities, obviously. But the media have said that these atrocities, they're really missing context. The context they...
Who's saying that? Like, me? I'm saying that. But who else is saying that in the fucking media? I almost want to see, hold up, what he actually posted. Do we have any access to see what the article titles were that he was looking for with context? Oh, the global context of the Hamas-Israel war. The Hamas attack is a sign of a new world order. So Ben is upset about
missing
Israel context, repercussions. Wait, I want to see the fucking actual full. Why is Johnny Harris editing his videos? Yeah, the global context of the Hamas-Israel war. I assume that this is not going to be pro-Palestinian at all. But for Ben, he's upset that even context exists, okay? He wants you to go, honestly, you just fucking sit there and you eat it, okay? That's what we need. China has become more bellicose towards Taiwan. India embraced a virulent nationalism. Israel formed the most extreme government in history. Hamas brazenly attacked Israel. All these developments sign the world may have fallen into a new period of disarray. A weaker U.S. Wait, this context is most, but still powerful. So it's just talking about context with respect to like America's, the entire context in this article is just like America's power is waning. It's not even fucking giving like any kind of analysis on how the situation unfolded. This is the second one, I think. Arab Center. So the first one he used is from the New York Times, which is not even about like offering a historical perspective and as to why this happened. It's not like, oh, this was the apartheid state or anything like that. It was just simply America has lost power. And then the other one is from Arab Center, D.C. Arab Center, Washington, D.C. The Hamas attack on Israel, context, analysis, and potential repercussions. Okay, Hamas's political objectives and motives. Okay, this one actually does offer context. This one does offer actual context as to what Hamas's goals are, why this attack happened, which I think is perfectly valid, by the way. But it is pretty funny. That's not what he's saying. He's saying the media is missing context despite what it says on the news. Yeah, but the arguments he's using aren't even offering context. Anyway, let's continue. Maybe I'm jumping too hard.
The context they are providing, well, that context is a bunch of lies.
Yeah, there's fucking bullshit. Hey, dude, that's what I mean. No, I was right. He literally is saying, oh, the media is offering context. They're lying on behalf of Palestinians. They're lying on behalf of Hamas. No, they're not. One of the two articles you used actually did that, okay? And they weren't justifying Hamas's actions. They were simply offering real historical analysis. And it was from Arab Center, D.C. The fucking New York Times article you used did not even do the thing that you're mentioning. All right, let's go.
There are 4 myths generally propagated by the left around the history of Israel and the Palestinians. These myths matter because they lead people into a peculiar moral relativism whereby attempted murder or successful murder of Jews is excused and
bullshit. Absolutely fucking bullshit. First of all, the idea that this is exclusively anti-Jewish murders or whatever is a false narrative. Let me tell you exactly why. Because guess what? In plenty of areas in the surrounding region of Gaza, in Israel proper, as we consider Israel proper, there are kibbutzes, okay, for sure, like these communal formations. But you know who else is out there who also tanks a lot of the hits against or from Hamas? Motherfucking Bedouins, okay? Purposefully left to starve by the Israeli government. Bedouins who are considered Palestinian citizens of Israel. So no, it's not an anti-Jewish action. Even this last October 7th military operation was not. The plural of kibbutz is kibbutzim. I know. Sorry. You're right. Kibbutzim. Okay? So even in that situation, it's not like directly an anti-Jewish action or anything like that, okay? It was bad. I have condemned it time and time again. It was a massacre. It was ruthless slaughter in some of these neighborhoods, okay? Unjustifiable, totally. But the idea that this was like simply an anti-Jewish action is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. It is a violent retaliation against, it is a violent retaliation against Israel, okay? You are the one who is adding the Jewish context to it because you want to make an argument off of it to basically always tie the international Jewish community back to Israel, which is anti-Semitic.
Meanwhile, the evil human rights violations of the Palestinians are minimized. Myth number 1. Israel is historically Muslim territory.
That's not true. Israel is not historically Muslim territory. I don't think anybody ever says Israel is historically Muslim territory. As a matter of fact, every historian, unless they're a fucking charlatan like Ben Shapiro or, Dennis Prager or whatever the fuck, will always say Israel used to be known as historic Palestine, and under the Ottoman Empire, it was an area where Jewish people, Christian people, and Muslim people peacefully coexisted.
This is a pure and absolute lie.
He's saying that it's a myth? No, dude, but it's not. People don't say it's Muslim, Israel's Muslim territory. They do not say that. That is not a thing that people say. It was a region under the Islamic Caliphate, under the Ottoman Empire, certainly, but it was not an area specifically for Muslims. So his first myth is a myth because it's not a thing that people say.
Muslim territory.
He's doing a fucking straw man.
This is a pure and absolute lie. Israel is historically Jewish territory. According to the Bible and certain interpretations of contemporaneous archaeology, Joshua entered the land of Israel in 1400 BC. The king...
Yeah, okay. The 1400 BC argument is fucking psychotic. You want to know why it's fucking psychotic? Because it's 1400 BC, man. Are you fucking stupid? Are you insane? You cannot make this argument for anything else. Dude, Native Americans have a much closer history to every fucking area that Ben Shapiro has lived in this country, from California all the way to fucking Florida, okay? There is no land back movement in that regard where the Israeli forces are totally just in fucking depopulating whoever the fuck lived there for hundreds of years by saying, well, 3,000 years ago, it was mine. That is a psychotic fucking take, unless you believe that the world is Turkish, in which case, maybe he's not wrong. The entire world is actually technically Turkish, including the Native Americans that actually are of Turkic origin. Okay, hold on 1 second. I have to play this. Hold on. Unless Ben Shapiro is going to make the argument that Native Americans were actually Turks that crossed when the continents were together, and therefore technically all land that Native Americans have inhabited technically belong to the Turks, then in which case I do agree with him, because let's be fucking really real. The entire world is Turkish except for the Hungarians. They've betrayed the Turks by acting like they're more than Turkish because they're Christian. So the entire world technically is Turkish except for the Hungarian population. And we should parse it out evenly, starting with Crimea and historic Palestine. That's right. Native Americans are Turks. Flexicans are Turks. Filipinos are Turks. Pinoy gang. Yeah, that's right. Except for the Hungarians. Never forget, Hungarians are not Turks because they betrayed. They betrayed their genetic haplogroup by acting like they're above it all, okay? Oh, yeah, look at us. We're Christian. We're totally different. Magyar! All right. Sorry, let's continue. Okay. As a half Hungarian, half Greek person, I constantly feel attacked. A ridiculous argument. This argument is literally, it's such a stupid argument because, let me tell you something. The reason why this is a dumbass argument is you can make the argument to colonize whatever fucking area you want to in Africa. You can just be like, sorry, we all came from Africa. All humans came from Africa. You go back far enough in time, you could just take over the entirety of Africa and say, it's your fucking land. That's nuts.
The Kingdom of David was founded around 1000 BC. The first Temple of Solomon was built in approximately 957 BC. The second temple was built in approximately 515 BC. The Hasmonean dynasty was founded in 166 BC. Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 BC, and the Jews exiled from Israel in 136 CE after the defeat of the Bar Kokhba revolt. The Romans, in an attempt to shame the Jews, renamed the area Palestine as an insult after the Jews' historic enemy, the Philistines. Even during the exile, there was continuous Jewish presence in the land. Islam, which is the religion of the Palestinian Arabs, was not even founded until the 7th century CE or AD. No independent Arab state has ever existed in the area known as Palestine.
You can't glance over 2,000 years of history. And once again, I'm glad I talked about the origination of this argument because it's a stupid one. And let me tell you why it's a stupid one. Because the idea that Jews are native to Palestine is not an argument that Theodore Herzl made, okay? Theodore Herzl very clearly defined Zionism as a colonial movement, okay? Theodore Herzl openly stated that there were natives living there when he wanted to first purchase Israel proper, the area that you know as Israel, historic Palestine, from the Ottoman Empire, and certainly after he got his wishes from the British Empire. The argument, the way to make this argument, you cannot fucking make an argument by going, my source? The Bible? Have you heard of it? That's ridiculous. That's fucking ridiculous. Ridiculous. There is no justification for this, especially over 3,000 fucking years. So that's already a ridiculous argument to make. Okay? And then secondly, the argument is not even being made by those who were the founding fathers of Zionism. That's right. Theodore Herzl did not believe that they were natives. That's precisely the reason why the originations of Zionism, like while they were deciding on where to go, they thought about Uganda as another place as the Jewish Holy Land, or at least not a Holy Land, but a Jewish area that you could populate as a nation state for Jews all around the world, and also Argentina and Alaska, okay? The Holy Land justification is just simply a way to motivate people to be with it. It's a way to globalize the cause. That's it. It's like a backronym. You know what I mean? You got the land, and now you're just, making up mythology surrounding it. Now, of course, Ben is a well-read individual. So it's rather odd for him as a well-read individual to just, go along with such ridiculous marketing proposals in an effort to justify, in an effort to engage in ad hoc justifications. Exactly. But who knows? Who knows?
No independent Arab state has
But regardless, this is, insane.
ever existed in the area known as Palestine. Myth number 2. Israel is the cause.
Again, for a much longer period in time that is like infinitely more historically relevant, okay? Infinitely more historically relevant, there were Jews and Christians and Muslims living there, okay? That's right. Under the Ottoman banner. That area was controlled by the Islamic Caliphate that was under the Ottoman Empire, okay? For those of you who also don't know, additionally, the Ottoman Empire was always was always very friendly to Jewish people. Anyway, let's continue. It's irrelevant.
Cause of the failure of land partition in the Middle East. This is, again, a pure lie. In 1917, the British promised the Jews the entire area of Palestine. At the time, Israel and Transjordan, which is today's Jordan. In 1920,
fun fact, that's that also Israel and Transjordan also happens to be the I think the Likud party's original banner. Where's the original early party symbol? Yeah, they're trans in the Jordans too. All right, let's just continue. Whatever. 1917, British promised the Jews the entire area of Palestine and Transjordan.
Israel and Transjordan, which is today's Jordan. In 1920, the Arabs began pogroms, a mass murder of.
The Arabs began pogroms in 1920s? Okay, going forward, listen, everything that Ben Shapiro says, going forward, just substitute Arabs and Zionist forces to understand the historical accuracy. So, was there violence? Absolutely. Part of the reason why there was actual violence on the ground was because of land grabs. It wasn't because there were moments where the Arabs themselves were unironically defending and hiding Jews from the British military. It is ridiculous. It was violence that they were subjected to by Britain. Okay, vid is clear until 7:39. Okay, thank you. There were also violent factions in violent Zionist brigades that were forcibly trying to remove certain Arabs from areas that they wanted. But overall, the idea that like this was Arabs doing pogroms is ridiculous. It is historically revisionist. And this is in the 20s. Wait, I assume if he's saying this in the 20s, then what the fuck's he gonna say? That the Nakba was a necessary thing to do? I assume that that's where he's gonna go to. But ultimately, these riots were being conducted against the British mandate. It was conducted against British forces. So it's not against Jewish people at all. Remember, 13% of the population at the time was already Jewish in historic Palestine.
In Jerusalem as a sign of anger at the British mandate in Palestine. In 1922, the British government, in response, announced in a white paper that the Transjordan area, 70% of Palestine, would be sliced off and made an Arab state. That would become Jordan. In 1937, the Peel Commission recommended a rump state for the Jews, in which the British would retain control over Jaffa and Jerusalem, the Arabs would get the entire Negev and nearly the entirety of Judea and Samaria, and the Jews would get a tiny swath of territory along the coast, including Tel Aviv and Haifa. In 1939, the British, in response again to Arab pressure, restricted Jewish immigration to Palestine just as the Nazis began World War II and just before.
Wait.
Restricted Jewish immigration to Palestine just as the.
Is he saying the Arab pressure restricted Jewish immigration to Palestine? The Arab pressure? The Arabs had pressure. The Arabs could pressure the British? I mean, wouldn't he say 1939? First of all, it's pretty funny that he's saying that as someone who lives in America, obviously, because Britain's new policy vis-a-vis Palestine on the eve of the war in Europe was clearly aimed at appeasing the Arabs. Convinced that for the Arabs, Jewish immigration formed the crux of the Palestine problem, Britain decided to, in 1939, limit the scope of this immigration. All matter of immigration at this point is being conducted with the specific purpose of ethnic displacement, and more violent means of ethnic displacement will come. However, having said that, limiting Jewish migration into that area at the time was not specifically just to that area at the time. It was it was also happening to the United States of America. Jewish people are trying to escape. It's making it seem like Arabs knew that the Holocaust was going to happen, and then that is the reason why they were stopping Jews from coming in or something like that, which is ridiculous.
The Nazis began World War II and just before the Holocaust. Nonetheless, the Jews sided with the Brits, the Arabs sided with Hitler. In 1948,
the guy that he's showing is literally a British mufti, like the guy that he's England's guy. The Grand Mufti that he's showing that met with Hitler is literally the guy that England placed in power. It's literally a British puppet. What the fuck is he talking about? Also,
nonetheless, the Jews sided with the Brits, the Arabs sided with Hitler.
The Jews sided with the Brits and the Arabs sided with Hitler is a funny way to cover this. Oh my God. Okay. He's leaving out how Britain promised Arabs that they would give them the right to self-determination of their own countries after World War I and went back on that promise with Palestine. Yes. That is also another part of the puzzle. Anyway, let's continue.
In 1948, the British mandate ended and Israel declared its independence.
And nothing happened. Okay, got it. So, all right. So we were right. He's not talking about the Nakba. It's not a part of it. It just kind of happened. Israel declared its independence. That's it. Kind of a jump there. I don't know what happened there. Is there nothing that happened in between? There was no process in which, like, I don't know, certain things occurred. Relatively important formative years, no? Ignored by the UN, Mizrahi Jews survived pogroms and expulsions too. Persecution of the Middle Eastern Jewry has been denied for a lengthy period, according to historians advocating for a more inclusive Jewish memory. Surrounding Cairo's Tahrir Square, houses confiscated from Jewish families host Egypt's top foreign embassies. To this day, ambassadors from Germany, Switzerland, and the United States work and live in homes expropriated from Jews after 1948, while their formerly Jewish-owned homes became the Great Library of Cairo and government offices. The expulsion of 850,000 mostly Mizrahi and Sephardic Jews from Arab and Muslim countries took place before, during, and after the Holocaust, As nationalist Arab leaders aligned with Nazi Germany in the name of oil and expelling the British, Jewish communities were targeted for pauperization, expulsion, and murder. Despite the region's centrality to Jewish history, the narratives of Middle Eastern Jews have long been considered supplemental in collective Jewish memory, as well as the rest of the world. One of the reasons of the marginalization of their accounts is the Mizrahi Jews developed different ways of telling their stories, according to historian and journalist Edwin Black. The Sephardic and Mizrahi communities have always been insular. Black told the Times of Israel at the time, in most major Jewish organizations, our collective memory is an Ashkenazi collective memory. Okay. The allegiance of Arab nationalist states. Are Arab nationalist movements have made mistakes, I think, in my opinion. They've made allegiances with British and French colonial occupations as well, thinking that this would offer them some level of freedom, and that was wrong. I think that it is also wrong to suspect that any other allegiance would help them. What was the chatter's other take? Ben is literally right here. There were most definitely Arab pogroms against the Jews. Oh, you're talking about the 1929 Palestine riots. That's what you were bringing up. The UN Mizrahi Jews survived pogroms and expulsions too. I'm sure he'll also talk about Lehi and Avraham Sturm also attempted to form an alliance with Hitler. He will not be talking about that. Also, one thing to always consider, one thing that Ben Shapiro does quite frequently in this entire argument, which is one thing that Ben Shapiro does quite frequently in this entire argument, where there are historically accurate, I fucking hate Ben Shapiro, but he's objectively correct when he says Jews face pogroms. Yes. One thing to always consider whenever Ben Shapiro talks about all Arab nations is looping them under the same aspirations, and then tying that back to Palestinians and making it seem as though it is the wrong of Palestinians that Palestinians individually have committed when talking about like Moroccans, pushing out Jewish people from their population or some shit. In many circumstances, as I've talked about before, Zionism and Arab nationalism simultaneously occurring was the reason as to why so many Arab countries that previously had no issues with peacefully coexisting with Jewish people, that were historically considered safe havens for Jewish people, were engaged in mass expulsion, which was unjustifiable and it was unacceptable. Okay? In most of those circumstances, mass expulsions occurred still under colonial rule, okay? Under the British Mandate. So that's something to always consider. It is an improper way. The acclaimed Israeli historian from Oxford notes this. It is an improper way of claiming that all of the actions that Zionist forces took leading up to the Nakba and during the Nakba were totally justified because of the constant state of threat that Jewish people were subjected to due to like other Arab nationalist movements. Avi Shlaim says he has proof of Zionist involvement in the 1950s attack on Iraqi Jews. Oh, this is possible Mossad bombings, which is a way to instill fear in Iraqi Jews living in Iraq that made them feel uncomfortable and want to move to Israel instead. I don't really care about this personally. I mean, I've read a little bit about it. I think it's overall. I think it's overall inconsequential. Israel was bombing Arab synagogues in Iraq because Arab Jews weren't Zionists at first. Palestinian militias had to protect Jews in Lebanon. They wanted to frame their Arab leaders. Plus, anti-Semitism became a thing in the Arab world when many Jewish citizens were becoming Israeli spies and forming Zionist underground groups. All right, let's get back to the video. I've gotten personally bogged down on areas that I am not. I will admit, I'm getting bogged down in areas that I am not 100% super strong on with respect to Israeli nation-state development. And this is causing me to hyper-focus on issues that Ben Shapiro is having with his arguments, where he's skipping multiple important steps, like the Nakba.
Declared its independence.
David,
Like the fact that he went from
the Holocaust.
the fact that he jumped over from British mandate to 1948 without ever talking about forcible expulsions, mass rapes, and mass murders, and the most moral army is ridiculous. The most moral army sending flyers out before they did such atrocities in Palestinian villages is ridiculous. It is almost akin to, I won't say it, but I mean it's just, you know, a lot of ethnic displacement occurred in this time frame that he is just simply not mentioning because it would look bad. What you just said when you say you don't care about that article is going to get clip chimped. Oh boy, I can already see people on Twitter calling you anti-Semitic. What do you mean? It's literally the reason why I said I don't care about this is specifically because that would be what? This argument is actually worse for like me going deeper into this is actually worse for the Zionist argument at all. Me saying I don't care about this in this circumstance is not is saying I don't want to read further into a possible anti-Zionist argument.
Nonetheless, the Jews sided with the Brits, the Arabs sided with Hitler.
Read the proclamation.
48, the British mandate ended and Israel declared its independence.
David Ben-Gurion read the Proclamation of Independence to 13 other members of the Israel Provisional National Council. Israel had taken its place among the nations of the world.
In 1964, with the Arabs still in full control of the Gaza Strip and West Bank, the Palestine Liberation Organization was founded, calling for the destruction.
Okay, before we got to this part, as far as the Nakba goes, the Havara agreement, yeah. As far as the Nakba goes, listen here. Also known as a catastrophe or disaster, was mass ethnic displacement occurring in the hands of Zionist forces that were trained by the British military and the British military itself. They went into villages. And ended up taking 78% of mandatory Palestine and declaring it as Israel. This did not happen. This did not happen with peaceful proclamations. It happened with the expulsion of 700,000 Palestinians and with the destruction of 500 at least villages in Palestine. Okay? They went in piece by piece to village after village. Every year on May 15th, Palestinians around the world, numbering around 12.4 million, mark the Nakba, or catastrophe, referring to the ethnic cleansing of Palestine and the near total destruction of Palestinian society in 1948. Palestinian experience of dispossession and loss of homeland is 69 years old this year. Between 1947 and 1949, at least 750,000 Palestinians from a 1.9 million population were made refugees beyond the borders of the state. Zionist forces had taken more than 78% of historic Palestine, ethnically cleansed and destroyed about 530 villages and cities, and killed about 15,000 Palestinians in a series of mass atrocities, which included more than 70 massacres. Though May 15, 1948 became the official day of commemorating the Nakba, armed Zionist groups had launched the process of displacement of Palestinians much earlier. Israel continues to oppress and dispossess Palestinians to this day, albeit in a less explicit way than during the Nakba, except not really right now. The root cause of the Nakba stemmed from the emergence of Zionism as a political ideology in the late 19th century Eastern Europe. I'm going to skip some of these parts at least, but obviously the major reason for Zionism comes from pogroms and Jewish people always historically being declared the villains in every societal formation when they've done nothing wrong, all the way from blood libel, like eating babies, having horns, things of that nature, are all. It's a tale as old as time itself. At the end of every conspiracy theory, you ultimately arrive at the anti-Semitic. You arrive at anti-Semitic conspiracies that tie it together. This is due to, in my opinion, a lack of historical materialist analysis, or a lack of materialist analysis in general. So you always have to find a villain, and the villain is always the outgroup, and the outgroup is always Jewish people historically. So for this reason, due to the anti-Semitic persecution and pogroms, there was an appeal of Zionism. Theodor Herzl is the founding father of Zionism and published a pamphlet that came to be seen as the ideological basis for political Zionism, der Judenstaat, or the Jewish state. Herzl concluded that the remedy for centuries-old anti-Semitic sentiments and attacks in Europe was the creation of a Jewish state. Though some of the movement's pioneers initially supported a Jewish state in places such as Uganda and Argentina, they eventually called for building a state in Palestine based on the biblical concept that the Holy Land was a promise to the Jews by God. Even though the people that did this, even though the people that that believed that it was a promised land, did not actually believe that it was a promised land, because as far as I understand it, I don't think Theodor Herzl was a particularly religious person himself. It's just that it was a good motivator for the international Jewish community. In the 1880s, the community of Palestinian Jews known as the Yishuv amounted to 3% of the total population. In contrast to the Zionist Jews who would arrive in Palestine later, the original Yishuv did not aspire to build a modern Jewish state in Palestine. After the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire, RIP, the British occupied Palestine, part of the secret Sykes-Picot Treaty of 1916 between Britain and France, divvied up the Middle East for imperial interests. In 1917, before the start of the British Mandate, the British issued the Balfour Declaration, promising to help the establishment of Palestine of a national home for Jewish people, essentially vowing to give away the country that was not theirs to give. It was a colonial project. Central to the pledge was Chaim Weizmann, a British-based Russian Zionist leader and chemist whose contributions to the British war effort during World War I made him well connected to the upper echelons of the British government. By giving their support to the Zionist goals in Palestine, the British hoped they could shore up support among significant Jewish populations in the U.S. and Russia for the Allied effort during World War I. They also believed that the Balfour Declaration would secure their control over Palestine after the war. From 1919 onwards, Zionist immigration into Palestine, facilitated by the British, increased dramatically. Weizmann, who later became Israel's first president, was realizing his dream of making Palestine as Jewish as England is English. During this time frame, Britain had already taken over much of the land, and of course had swapped that control from the Ottoman Empire back to themselves, and certain parts of that land were sold, despite the fact that people were still living on it, from landowners directly to the Jewish people that wanted to populate it. This was, of course, wasn't particularly well received by the people that were already living there. By 1922 and 1935, the Jewish population rose from 9% to nearly 27% of the total population, displacing tens of thousands of Palestinian tenants from their lands as Zionists bought land from absentee landlords. So this is, okay, they mentioned that part. There you go. So leading Arab and Palestinian intellectuals openly warred against the motifs of the Zionist movement in the press as early as 1908. With the Nazi seizure of power in Germany between 1933 and 1936, 30,000 to 60,000 European Jews arrived on the shores of Palestine. They were also trying to go elsewhere, but, you know, other nations weren't exactly too fond of Jewish migration because the Western world has always been incredibly anti-Semitic. Make no mistake. In 1936, Palestinian Arabs launched a large-scale uprising against the British and their support for Zionist settler colonialism, known as the Arab Revolt. The British authorities crushed the revolt, which lasted until 1939, violently. They destroyed at least 2,000 Palestinian homes in the process and put 9,000 Palestinians in concentration camps and subjected them to violent interrogation, including torture, and deported 200 Palestinian nationalist leaders. At least 10% of the Palestinian male population had been killed, wounded, exiled, or imprisoned by the end of this revolt. The British government, worried about the eruption of violence between the Palestinians and Zionists, tried to curtail, at several points, immigration of European Jews. Zionist lobbies in London overturned their efforts. So ultimately, the real reason wasn't specifically or directly Zionist Jewish people moving in to British Mandate Palestine, but it was also Palestinians being displaced and then having to fight back against the British occupation, which became incredibly bloody and incredibly violent. And the British government curbed or stomped out that violence with even more violence, and at the time started actually training Zionist forces as well, because they were not interested in occupying the space permanently. They were inevitably going to leave, so they started arming and training the Zionist groups and forming militias. Anyway, in 1944, several Zionist armed groups declared war on Britain for trying to put limits on Jewish immigration to Palestine at a time when Jews were fleeing the Holocaust. The Zionist paramilitary organizations launched a number of attacks against the British. The most notable is the King David Hotel bombing in 1946, where the British administrative headquarters were housed. 91 people were killed in the attack. So The Zionist forces started also fighting against the imperialist British occupation. In early 1947, the British government announced it would be handing over the disaster it had created in Palestine to the United Nations, which was very cool of them to do, okay? And ending its colonial project there. On November 29th, 1947, the UN adopted Resolution 181, recommending the partition of Palestine into Jewish and Arab states. At the time, the Jews in Palestine constituted 1/3 of the population and owned less than 6% of the total land area. Under the UN partition plan, they were allocated 55% of the land, encompassing many of the main cities with Palestinian Arab majorities and the important coastline of Haifa to Jaffa. The Arab state would be deprived of key agricultural lands and seaports, which led the Palestinians to reject the proposal. Shortly following the UN Resolution 181, war broke out between the Palestinian Arabs and Zionist armed groups, who, unlike the Palestinians, had gained extensive training and arms from fighting alongside Britain in World War II. Zionist paramilitary groups launched vicious process of ethnic cleansing in the form of large-scale attacks aimed at mass expulsion of Palestinians from their towns and villages to build a Jewish state, which culminated in the Nakba, also known as the catastrophe. While some Zionist thinkers claim there is no proof of systematic master plan for the expulsion of Palestinians for the creation of the Jewish state, and their dispossession was an unintended result of the war, the presence of a Palestinian Arab majority in what Zionist leaders envisioned as a future state meant the Nakba was inevitable. This is why some in the Israeli Knesset find themselves in a constant limbo of whether or not recognizing that the Nakba was even real, or if it was real, maybe it didn't go hard enough, or maybe, I don't know, we should do another one, basically. Ben-Gurion wrote, after the formation of a large army in the wake of the establishment of the state, we will abolish partition and expand to the whole of Palestine. The British occupation authorities had announced that they would be ending their mandate in Palestine on the eve of May 15, 1948. 8 hours earlier, David Ben-Gurion, who became Israel's first prime minister, announced what the Zionist leaders called a declaration of independence in Tel Aviv. Do you feel like in that process where, I don't even think they did a good job of fucking perfectly describing what the Nakba was, but the expulsion and flight of 700,000 Palestinians and the depopulation and destruction of 500 villages occurred. Do you feel like that is important to mention in the formation of the Israeli nation state? Or do you feel like it was better left without mentioning that? Because I feel like it's partially, I feel like it's important, right? Now, the argument that he would make normally in this situation is that it was justifiable because it was a war, and it wasn't simply a mass expulsion of a civilian population. Nope, not even fucking close to the same thing. It's so fucking insane that compare the two. Yeah, no, I don't think that, I do not believe that the Nakba is even remotely close to the same as the Holocaust, for the record. That would be revisionist. It would be trivializing the Holocaust. I would never say that. I am not saying that, for the record. I hope that people are understanding my position. I do not think that that is comparable at all. That would be a ridiculous argument to make, and I am not making that. It is absolutely an unimaginable act of cruelty, but it is not the Holocaust. So, yeah, let's continue. Anyway. Ben Shapiro works for the Daily Wire. He's not an objective or logical person despite presenting himself that way. Missed details like that are not accidental but deliberate. No, he absolutely is deliberately missing details like that. He's not missing details. He's just refusing to, he is omitting key details of the Israeli nation state forming, and he's doing that specifically so he can present it as though it is infinitely more justifiable. And this is like pretty fucking important. It's especially important because this displacement is like the start of what we now understand as Palestinian culture. Like contemporary Palestinian culture places a great deal of emphasis on the Nakba, because why wouldn't they? It's 700,000 people being violently purged through literally systemic rapes, okay? And mass ethnic cleansing campaigns, like pulling people in villages, the elderly and the children, over to a wall and fucking shooting them in the back of the head. A lot of this is very well documented as well. And that's precisely the reason why it's still contested amongst Israeli historians, I get not contested. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it's a lie by omission that Ben Shapiro is engaging in, and it is I don't know. I mean, you guys would know better. I don't know how. The only thing I know is that they act like it's not real. It's disputed, but it is technically not disputed. The grossest argument that you will hear, maybe not from Ben Shapiro, because he just completely jumped over that point and immediately moved on to the commander of the PLO army. But the argument is that people voluntarily left. That's what they say, which is ironic because the same exact arguments that are happening right now in Gaza used to be used during that area and in that time frame as well. Oh, there were mass expulsions, but they were actually warned ahead of time that mass expulsions were coming. Oh, we own that land, so we were going to inevitably have to move people out of that land. We were going to make living space for ourselves in that land. Oh, some atrocities happened, but, it had to happen because there was a violent retaliation in defense of people being expelled from their homes forcibly, or I think the grossest argument is that at the top of the hour, there isn't a 3-minute ad break when there is. And if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get 1 free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster. Hopefully that's me. The leading scholar on the Nakba is Benny Morris, a Jewish historian who called it ethnic cleansing, but also said it was justified. There are parallels to how Israel's current military operations and the way that they justify it. I think one of the worst things that I've heard, at least, with respect to the Nakba, is that people voluntarily left their homes. We've watched the Vox video on the Nakba before. It's only some of the story, but yeah, that is definitely the worst argument. You seem to throw out it's well documented a lot and never actually confirm that it is documented. See, IDF rapes that you claimed were well attested, when the links you showed say the exact opposite. Yeah, brother. I'm glad that you and the Reddit detective brigade got together and said that the colonial apartheid state actually churns out less rape than rape that happens in war, which must mean that there is no rape happening at the systematic level against a group of individuals who have no legal recourse because they're second-class citizens. Thank you for doing that, by the way. That was really sick. I'm really glad that you said that constant strip searching Palestinian women, for example, at checkpoints and whatnot, technically doesn't constitute for rape. I don't know how you fucking freaks live with yourselves, by the way. Okay? I saw your fucking dumbass arguments, bitch. Those are such idiotic fucking arguments. What the fuck are you saying? Like, can you imagine not having your own police force, that you are just basically you're basically living in an apartheid state. Not basically. You are literally living in an apartheid state. You have no legal recourse against those who commit whatever kind of atrocities against you. I mean, you have no legal recourse against fucking murder. Okay? Rape happens all the fucking time in America, inside of the American carceral structure, where there's some semblance of legal recourse, and even then, there's rarely enough documentation on it. The fact that you would turn around and go, well, it's kind of crazy because like all of these rapes were disproven by the same fucking apartheid structure by the same fucking forces that are committing the atrocious acts. Well, I guess that's enough for me. While also simultaneously acting like, taking the clothes off of people unjustifiably at fucking checkpoints is not technically an act of sexual violence against an oppressed people that have no way of even, they have no way of even reporting this sort of thing. And the few brave people that do end up not getting anything in return, like not getting any kind of closure in return. And then there's also a history of shame on top of that as well. It's ridiculous.
Taken its place among
Anyway, let's continue with Ben's
the nations
video.
of the world.
In 1964, with the Arabs still in full control of the Gaza Strip and West Bank, the Palestine Liberation Organization was founded, calling for the destruction of Israel. Here is a contemporaneous British report on the first chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization.
One of the most extreme anti-Israeli politicians in the Arab world, Ahmed el-Shukeri. the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization. As the spokesman for 1 million Palestine refugees, he's fanned the flames of hatred for Israel with unflagging energy.
This is such a funny thing to fucking mention without like talking about the many legal representatives of the state of Israel saying literally identical shit about Palestinians in general. And there are way more contemporary examples of just openly fucking saying that Palestinians are shady, Arabs are sneaky, Arabs are dirty. Wow, how did there become 1 million refugees, Ben? It's been 3 minutes. Why are there 1 million Palestinian refugees, Ben? How did they become refugees, you think? Like, how did that happen? It seems like you skipped something there when you're in your little history lesson. I wonder how they became fucking refugees.
Ahmed Elsman for 1 million Palestine refugees. He's fanned the flames of hatred for Israel with unflagging energy.
In 1967, the Arab League announced the 3 no's: no peace, no recognition, no negotiations, with all of Israel's enemies mobilizing.
Wait, what the fuck? Dude, there's no way that this is how he's I mean, it's a short video. I don't even understand. I forgot what the main point was. The main point was what? The main point was what? 2, that like land partitioning failure is Israel's fault? Yeah, I mean, okay. So, I guess he's saying that it's not Israel's fault.
The Palestine Liberation Organization.
Because, oh, okay. So he's trying to present every instance of land partitioning as not Israel's fault, but instead the Arabs' fault. And he's doing this by saying Israelis were Jews were harmed under British mandate, and that the Arabs, he's portraying the Arabs as like siding with the Nazis. And then he's saying that, I mean, he didn't say that the Nakba happened, but he just like kind of skipped that point. And then he turned around and said, you know, the nation state was formed. And then, and now he's saying that like in 1967, the League of Arab Nations, like they just said no.
Palestine Liberation Organization. Hatred for
no peace, no recognition, no negotiations.
The Arab League said no peace, no recognition, no negotiations. That's really cool. What happened? 1967. So we skipped from we skipped from we skipped from 1948 to 1967. Got it. Okay.
Of Israel's enemies mobilizing against it, Israel launched a preemptive strike on the Egyptian Air Force, inaugurating the 1967 Six-Day War. This ended.
Yeah. So at least according to the military commanders in the immediate aftermath, and literally Israeli officials, the preemptive 1967 war was, you know, I mean, it was, they call it a preventative first strike, but as far as we understand, there was no indication that Egypt was ever going to attack Israel, that they had any capacity to do so or any indication that they would do that. So they did a preemptive attack. So yeah, they did a preemptive attack. They destroyed the air forces of all the surrounding nations, and then openly stated that there was no shot that any of these countries could do anything anyway. And also on top of that, openly stated that they didn't think that Egypt could ever attack or were even interested. And it's not even. This is not even like Israeli officials. American officials have said the same thing, and also so have Egyptian historians as well.
With Israel gaining miraculously the Sinai Desert, the Golan Heights, the Gaza Strip, Judea and Samaria, now known as the West Bank, as well as the entirety of Jerusalem. In 1973, the Arabs launched all-out war again, this time on Yom Kippur. Israel survived and gained territory. In 1979, Israel gave the Sinai back to Egypt in return for peace.
That was so chill of them, so kind.
In 1993, Israel agreed to the Oslo Accords, which promised a step-by-step process to establish a Palestinian state. In 1998, Israel conceded.
Yeah, what happened to that fucking guy that did it, you think? Yeah, okay. Every single thing that he's saying from this point on is a lie. Every single step of the way throughout the Israeli history, every single step of the way, there were acts of aggression for almost every single time. Acts of aggression committed by a citizen that created mass chaos, that from an Israeli citizen against Palestinians that would create chaos. Palestinians would fight back. Palestinians would get angry. And then a fuck ton of Palestinians would die in the hands of the Israeli government's forces. Every single time. That asymmetrical war and the disproportionate number of casualties on the Palestinian side in comparison to the Israeli side has been a historical constant. Okay? Always. And the guy who fucking facilitated this deal was assassinated, as you guys know. And the people who assassinated him, or championed his assassination rather, are now in government, and also they voted them in. I mean, he was already unpopular for he was already unpopular for this move right here.
Palestinian state. Israel agreed to the Oslo Accords, which promised a step-by-step process to establish a Palestinian state. In 1998, Israel conceded yet more territory to the Palestinian Authority under the Prime
Also ridiculous.
Ministership of Benjamin Netanyahu. In 2000, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak offered Yasser Arafat, the terrorist leader of the Palestinian Authority, 91% control over the West Bank in contiguous territory.
Every single step of this way, by the way, Ben Shapiro is also, of course, failing to mention that Israel is continuously partitioning the West Bank and also partitioning Gaza. Well, not partitioning Gaza, but settling in Gaza as well. So every part of this has just been a fucking lie. Israel consistently says, sure, we're going to do fucking a two-state. Yeah. Here's your territory. Here's mine. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly valid. And then they have continued. They've continued to develop the West Bank and done the exact same thing in Gaza as well. Israel only offered Palestinian rump states with no sovereignty over its borders, military, airwaves, airspace, water rights, or right of return. Exactly. Every step in every single one of these talks, one of the major points of contention was to allow Palestinians the right to return, which Israel always said no to. So they've never even offered good conditions, and over the course of many, many years of getting fucking being victim to the asymmetrical warfare of the Israeli state, fighting against like a bunch of militant groups that are desperately trying to, through peaceful means and through violent means, become actors that Israel has to negotiate with. They have regularly asked for less, the Palestinians have, and Israel has even refused to offer that to the Palestinians. Every single one of these deals that he just brought up, Israel has reneged on that offer. It is ridiculous to say that it was Palestinians that did not agree to it, especially even the 2000 Camp David one, where it is. I mean, Bill Clinton also said that the Palestinians refused, and yet there were people in that room who wrote extensively on the reality that the Palestinian leadership had secretly conceded to offering additional territory in the West Bank to Israeli control, as long as some of their autonomy was recognized.
And an Israeli security presence along 15% of the border with Jordan. Arafat walked away from the table and began the Second Intifada, a massive terror wave that ended with the death of thousands of Jews. In 2005.
So, that is also fucking nasty. So the Second Intifada is not saying that Yasser Arafat was doing the Second Intifada is also silly. This happened by mostly. I mean, this happened as a consequence of the period in between the First Intifada and the Second Intifada, where Israel kept taking more territory and killing more Palestinians every single time Palestinians tried to fucking push back. Whenever Ben Shapiro talks about how Jews were killed in any of the intifadas, you have to remember the disproportionate number of murdered Palestinians. In the First Intifada, which he also skipped over for some fucking reason, it was mostly strikes and also rock throwing. There was one or two acts of direct violence against Israelis, and the retaliation from the Israeli state at this point was absolutely unjustifiable. It was mass violence campaigns, including Purposeful bone breaking, as I've talked about before. Okay, the idea that the Palestinians should just like sit back and take that is ridiculous. The second Intifada also was, of course, more violent than the first, but was directed by some of the more fundamentalist groups that were at that point no longer interested in a peaceful resolution, because they felt like Israel was reneging on the terms and conditions that they put forward at the table over and over again. Here it is. During the first year of the uprising, Israel killed 142 Palestinians in Gaza, and not a single Israeli had been killed in Gaza. That's the first Intifada. In the second one, also during the course of that uprising, Israel jailed 175,000 Palestinians. 30,000 Palestinian children needed medical care after being beaten. 10,000 had broken bones. 1/5 of the injured were under 5 years old, and 23,000 were subject to the harsh interrogation. Israel killed 1,200 Palestinians, and Palestinians at the end of that killed 160 Israelis. That was the first Intifada. There's also additional acts of terror that occur in this time frame. This is what I read yesterday, the Zachary Foster Twitter thread. 1994, Baruch Goldstein, as I talked about before, a Jewish settler, massacred 29 praying Muslims. Obviously, that was the turning point for many of the resistance movement that said, fuck it, we're going YOLO mode, we're going full-blown violent mode. 12 suicide bombings happened at the hands of Hamas. By 2000, Hamas had killed 185 Israelis and left over 1,200 wounded. This is before the second Intifada. Then in the second Intifada, the uprising was still mostly nonviolent. Israel killed 14 Palestinian children. So from September 28th, 2000 through February 8th, 2005, Hamas and other militant groups carried out 138 suicide attacks and killed 1,038 Israelis. Now, during this time frame, Israel, of course, killed 3,189 Palestinians over the same period, obviously. But one thing to always consider was that there was one group that Ben Shapiro is calling a terrorist that was collaborating with the Israeli government. So the terror attacks that were happening in the hands of Hamas, the terror attacks that were happening at that time, in that same time frame, could have been absolutely squashed, not through violent means, but through a pathway towards peace. Except Israel did not have any real interest in trying to stop the terror, because they would then utilize the terror as a means to enforce stricter controls on the Gaza Strip and also continue expanding in the Western Territory in the West Bank. Or not Western Territory, and the Eastern Territory in the West Bank. I like that he says you're being lied to about Israel and Palestine and tries to make an 8-minute video, okay? And he fails to mention that he's the one who's doing the lying. Now, he's not entirely lying. He's just lying by omission for the most part, because there's a lot, if you leave out of this, it can, I guess, look bad. And then if you just simply say these deals fell apart and not mention that the part that was destroying the deals or never really following through on the deals was the Israeli authorities, then it kind of leaves this feeling with you that, like, maybe the Palestinians were the ones who were fucking everybody over. That is not the case. I hope that much is clear.
The border with Jordan. Arafat walked away from the table and began the second Intifada, a massive terror wave.
Yeah, this is fucking bullshit. Like, Arafat did not walk away from the table and begin the second Intifada
that ended with the death of thousands of Jews. In 2005, Israel unilaterally withdrew from the Gaza Strip. Hamas immediately took it over and began using it as a base for terrorist activity. That continues until this day. In 2008, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert offered even more than Barak in terms of territory, with some land swaps to maintain Jewish-populated areas in exchange for some Israeli territory. Olmert even...
This is fucking disgusting. He should show a video. He should show this throughout this entire video. He should show the map and how much of the territory Israel is partitioned at this point. It's so ridiculous, dude. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to parse through that. Like, I don't really. He should just keep showing like how much of the look. If you want to get a better understanding of what was going on in Israel and what their official policy was, I highly recommend watching my YouTube video on the matter. It's from last week. How We Got Here, Israel-Palestine War Explained. Now, obviously, that's a shitty title. Shouts out to my editors for that. 2 hours ago, Hasanabi said he skipped the video so as to not start malding. Yeah, but I mean, this was an 8-minute video, so I personally thought this would be easier to just like parse through, not realizing that Ben Shapiro is very good at shoving a fuck ton of misinformation. It got views. Chill on the editor. True, it did get views. But yeah, this video, I go through piece by piece of exactly how we got here. I think this is that video. Is this not? Oh, maybe not. Never mind. This isn't even that video. I thought this was the video where I talked through the expansion of the land. Okay, but anyway, that video features some of that information. Anyway.
Even offered to relinquish Israeli sovereignty at the Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism, as well as the entire Old City of Jerusalem to a 5-member non-sovereign international trusteeship comprising Israel, the PA, Jordan, the US, and Saudi Arabia. PA head Mahmoud Abbas walked away without a counteroffer. Myth number 3. Israel expelled all Palestinian Arabs from British Mandate Palestine. This is, again, a lie. Israel's founding documents asked Arabs to stay. Israel's Declaration of Independence, in the middle of an ongoing war with Arab nations, reads, quote, "We appeal, in the very midst of the onslaught launched against us now for months, to the Arab inhabitants of the State of Israel to preserve peace and participate in the upbuilding of the state on the basis of full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its provisional and permanent institutions." Debate has raged for decades over how many Arabs left the nascent state of Israel thanks to expulsion, and how many left because they were told to leave by their own leaders. An estimate.
Oh my God. Okay, dude. That's fucking insane. Now, I already maintained the position that the Nakba is not equivalent to the Holocaust, but this is like a denial of mass atrocities.
Estimated 250,000 to 300,000 refugees left before their homes were even in a war zone.
Actually, I mean, this is very similar to, there is definitely a parallel here to how the Turkish government teaches the Armenian genocide. In the middle of war, they were collaborators with the Russian front, had to move them to different locations. Some of them died in the process, that sort of thing. I've learned all of this when I was in school. This is how they teach in Turkish school. They call it the lie of Armenian genocide, but that is how they teach it. The justification is that it happened as a consequence of Armenians collaborating with Russians. That's what they say, and then they say that they simply just wanted to relocate the Armenians to different positions in Syria specifically, and some of them died in the process. That is like how it's that's how it's taught, which is literally how the Trail of Tears is taught as well, I assume. So it's cool that Ben is participating in that similar thing.
We didn't compel them to leave. They left on their own will, or rather on the will of Arab leaders who advised them even before trouble started.
The collapse.
Come on, dog. How do you open up articles? Does anyone remember? Like articles that are paywalled? No, I disabled the JavaScript. It's not working. Hold on. I'm going to do archive. Here, I just want to read something here. Secret letter detailing Israel's plan to expel Arabs without unnecessary brutality. 6 months after the War of Independence ended, David Ben-Gurion sought to expel more than 10,000 Arabs from the north for unspecified security reasons. Why was a long declassified letter describing that plan recently hidden again from public view? This is after the Nakba. Even after the Nakba. Like, ridiculous that this is this is not like deliberately designed, that people just basically personally chose to leave for funsies where they like homes that they lived in. If that's why they if that's why they left, why do they bring their fucking keys with them, thinking that they'd be able to return again? Just, fun stuff to consider, I guess. A letter going to auction reveals the Israeli first prime minister tried to thwart British attempts to resettle the enemy in Haifa. The letter contradicts the testimony by Golda Meir. Not only did they forcibly expel the Palestinians that left, why, Ben Shapiro, did they refuse to let Palestinians come back? If they left on their own volition, why did the Israeli government at that point not allow them to come back? Why are they not allowing them to come back to this day? 75 years, and they are still not allowed to come back.
Collapse of Arab society during the 1947-48 war, leaving
Because they left thinking that Israel would be destroyed and fought in wars against Israel? Are they just supposed to be welcomed back after? Yeah, dude, you fucking really stuck it to those women and children and the elderly who went and fought in wars. You know, there are civilians, right? Like, you understand that there are just innocent civilians in that situation. I don't know.
many Arabs without a means of support has been well documented.
Israel will do everything in its power to help the resettlement of these refugees by paying compensation and by other means.
Hundreds of thousands of these refugees ended up in the West Bank and Gaza, which remained Arab territory until 1967. Furthermore, Arab nations refused to take in hundreds of thousands of Arabs, turning their co-religionists into refugees who have maintained that status for literally decades, a situation unparalleled in human history. Fully 62% of such refugees live outside the West Bank and Gaza Strip, according to the UNRWA. Meanwhile, Israel, tiny Israel, took in over 800,000 Jews expelled from Arab lands between 1948 and 1951 and never asked for land to be returned to those Jews.
Wait, first of all, they 1,000,000% would not want to go back. What the fuck? Part of the reason why everyone wanted me to talk about this was because this was in Israel's interest. There was a obvious goal to populate Israel with Jewish people. Okay? Because the Holocaust had happened in Europe, all of the Jewish people that remained around the globe, the more populated areas where Jewish people and Arabs used to peacefully coexist, were the areas where Jewish people were. Israel wanted to populate Israel with Jewish people so that they would no longer have an issue with the number of Palestinian Arabs that live there. It's also always funny when he says like tiny Israel, because like, okay, well, fucking land left for the Palestinians in that situation is even tinier. A major component here, a major problem here is literally great replacement narratives, okay? I'll tell you, a big part of the reason why Palestinians do not have a right to return, while anyone and everyone around the planet could go and live in Israel and even in the fucking West Bank if they want to, and especially Jews, is because they are worried that if Palestinians were to be able to return, that they would overtake the land. That is the real fear. They are also worried about a secular nation-state development where Palestinians have equal rights and a right to return would immediately mean 12 million fucking people would have equal rights to the 9 million people that are currently living. 23% of those 9 million are also Arabs, Palestinian citizens of Israel. So they're worried that, democracy would happen. And in that democratic process, they worry that the now, once again, majority Arab population in that singular nation state would do the same violent, cruel, and humiliating punishments to the Jewish population that Israel subjected them to. I do not believe that that would happen, and I think that a hypothetical violence in the future is not reason alone to continue doing the very real violence right now. They aren't afraid of a secular state with equal rights. They are worried about a theocracy, which is ironic given that Israel is arguably a theocratic semi-democracy. Well, no, it's not a democracy. You're right. It is theocratic. Israel is currently theocratic. Israel has moved to develop a theocracy, a Jewish one. And you're right. They are worried about a theocracy. They're worried that a secular state with equal rights offered to Muslim Palestinians would yield a theocratic, Hamas-led government that would do to the Jews what Israel is doing to the Palestinians right now. There is no reason, there is absolutely zero reason to believe this. Okay? This is to justify a current apartheid theocratic regime. In order to justify the current existing apartheid theocratic regime, you are saying that maybe in the future they would do to us what we've done to them. This has always been the fear, This has always been the fear in minoritarian rule. This has always been the fear in colonial states. This has always been the fear with apartheid South Africa. This has been the fear after in the Reconstruction era, where whites immediately, like slave-owning whites, immediately tried to reestablish the same racial hierarchy and were successfully able to do so. It's always the justification for those, even when they lose, to make sure that the hierarchies of power remain. And in all of those circumstances, they usually do remain, by the way. That's the unfortunate reality. Just like in apartheid South Africa or post-apartheid South Africa, and just like in the South right now in contemporary U.S. South. Yeah, it's the same rhetoric that the right uses and fears if the U.S. becomes a majority non-white country. So it's ridiculous. It's this notion that like Arabs and Jews are different somehow, or that Muslims and Jews are different somehow. There is no indication that the Palestinian Arab majority would ever push for a fundamentalist Islamist society. The only instance where Hamas has become the governing body was an incredibly violent one. It was an incredibly violent one where radicalization occurred as a consequence of the apartheid regime consistently increasing the violence that Palestinians were subjected to. Learning about David Ben-Gurion, it weirdly doesn't make Netanyahu seem like all that much of an outlier from the prime minister's past. No, there is no... That's why I always point to like even labor governments also still continuing the exact same expansionist protocols that prior governments had. It's never ended. Okay, like the apartheid expansion and the process never stopped. There was never really, like, there were moments where it slowed down, but it never actually stopped, because that was always the goal, is to inevitably engage in the slow burn of ethnic cleansing and ethnic displacement until, you know, everyone leaves. You love the fourth myth? Oh, I haven't even seen the fourth myth yet. I'm worried. And for the record, some of the documented ones, even before May 15, some of the most infamous massacres that had already been committed, the Baldat al-Shaikh massacre on December 31st, 1947, killing up to 70 Palestinians, the Sasa massacre on February 14th, 1948, when 16 houses were blown up and 60 people lost their lives, and famously the Deir Yassin massacre on April 9th, 1948, when about 110 Palestinian men, women, and children were slaughtered. One of the guys that participated in the Deir Yassin massacre went viral recently. Do you guys remember that really old guy? Do you remember the really old guy? Does anyone have the link for that? Can you send me the link? The really old guy that they bring up, the oldest reservist in the current Israeli military, the 95-year-old guy. Oh, here, this guy. Erase the memory of them. Erase them, their families, mothers, and children. This motherfucker is being held together by just pure hate, dude. He's just like pure fucking hate, dude. What an insane person.
אסור להם לחיות לחיות האלה. בימים האלה לא תהיה לנו ברירה. נקבל עוד טילים מהחיזבאללה ויקומו כל הערבים בארץ נגדנו, ואז לא תהיה ברירה. מי יש לו נשק יירה בהם. אתה יש לך שנק.
If you have an Arab neighbor, don't wait.
אתה לא תחכה שהוא יבוא אליך הביתה.
Go to his home and shoot him.
אליו הביתה ותירה בו. תכנס בהם לפני שיפעילו.
Attack them and don't wait for them. And for the Iron Dome to activate. Attack them before that. We want to invade, not like before. We want to enter and destroy what's in front of us. You banned him in chat shortly before this. So he's saying this. They trot him out. The Israeli army trots this fucking corpse out to restore morale, sorry. Okay? To restore morale. His name is Ezra Yachin, a 95-year-old Israeli army reservist, talking about how every Jew with a weapon is to kill Palestinians and erase the memory of them. Okay? He served as a combat soldier and was involved in the Deir Yassin massacre. I think, and I don't know enough about this, but Is this the brigade that also, no, I don't know. Actually, I'm not going to say it. I don't know. There is anyway, this is IDF, the Nakba myth. The Nakba is a myth. Also IDF, here's a guy who literally did the Nakba. Is it the same brigade that tried to link up with Hitler? There's more info on the 0 HP motherfucker. He added there was no excuse. Veteran involved. He was a member of the Lehi Zionist militia, which carried out atrocities before the creation of the state. He was involved in Deir Yassin, when Zionist militiamen belonging to the Lehi and Irgun groups went from house to house, killing more than 100 people in the small Palestinian village near Jerusalem, despite having agreed to an earlier truce. Many of those killed were women, children, and the elderly. The massacre, among other atrocities, led to the forced expulsion of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homeland in what would be known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. In an interview with the Jewish press, Yachin said his Lehi unit was called upon to carry out the attack on Deir Yassin. The village was a terrorist hideout, he said. Leftist historians claim that we ruthlessly and with premeditation slaughtered the inhabitants of the village, including women and children. That was not the case at all. It is true that women and the youngsters were killed, but that was because they served as fighters. Brother, every fucking carcass that is involved in the inception of this goddamn fucking nation state has been saying the exact same arguments since the inception of the fucking nation state. Okay? Like, it's still the same. Child shields, dude. Human shields. Fucking shields. Irgun became Harud, that in the end renamed to Likud. Lehi, Fighters for Freedom of Israel, often pejoratively known as the Stern Gang, was a Zionist paramilitary organization founded by Avraham Yair Stern in mandatory Palestine. Its avowed aim was to evict the British authorities from Palestine use of violence, allowing unrestricted immigration of Jews in the formation of a Jewish state. I split from the Irgun military group in 1940. Am I saying Lehi? Okay, Lehi actually sought alliance with the fascist Italy and Nazi Germany during World War II. Believing that Nazi Germany was a lesser enemy of the Jews than Britain, Lehi twice attempted to form an alliance with the Nazis, proposing a Jewish state based on nationalist and totalitarian principles and linked to the German Reich by alliance. Lehi also referred to themselves as terrorists and may have been one of the last organizations to do so. You are a killer? What do you mean? The only thing I'm killing is the top of the hour ad break, baby. Dude, I do want to see it because I feel like he's going to do tricks. He's going to be doing incredible gymnastics right now. I mean, it's a preposterous notion, but not as preposterous thinking that you will not see the ads at the top of the hour when there's a 3-minute ad break, which you will. You will see that. Here's the 3-minute ad break now.
Israel is most certainly not an apartheid state. Arab citizens of Israel have the same rights as Jewish citizens.
No, he doesn't.
20% of all citizens of Israel are Arab. The vast majority of Palestinians live under Palestinian rule in the West Bank. All Arabs in the Gaza...
Yeah. Never ever... Wait, what's that? Never show how the Palestinians live under the West Bank because it will destroy your argument. Yeah, no, this stuff is fucking ridiculous. Yeah, no, he's gross, disgusting, pervert, fuck him, piece of shit monster. This is where the role reversal, it's not that complicated, Michael Brooks' conversation comes to mind. It's not that complicated. It is an apartheid state. If roles were reversed and like an Arab population had forcibly expelled Jews from an area and then pushed them into these two different corners and then simultaneously were bombing one fucking open air prison that had operated where 2 million Jews were living there and you controlled their fucking food, electricity, and water. And also on the other side, you consistently expanded into that territory where they didn't have their own fucking police force. And there were different license plates and different roads that you built specifically for the Jews, you'd be like, that's the fuck? That's happened already. That happened. Something similar happened, with the Holocaust. The fuck's going on here?
Gaza Strip lived under Hamas rule. Israel's population, again...
Like, at this point, I feel like the only difference is it's not happening as rapidly. That's it. Like, that's the major difference. Ethnic displacement and murder happening in a much slower pace, but mostly just ethnic displacement. Because let's be real. Murders have happened. Of course, like systematic murder occurs. There is an apartheid state. That is 100%. It's just like the thing that hasn't happened is just like putting Palestinian people in the camps and then killing them. And the Palestinian people that were put into an open-air prison known as Gaza do get routinely bombed, but not to the same degree.
Again, is 20% Arab. Arab parties have sat in the Israeli government, and Arab sits on Israel's Supreme Court. There are 0 Jews living under Palestinian rule. The only apartheid state is any state of Palestine.
Wait, wait, what? He's saying there are no Jews living under Palestinian rule? To say, wait, does he think an apartheid state is when you don't have any? Wait, what? Does he think, first of all, there are Palestinian Jews, but is he trying to say that an apartheid state is when there's no Jews living there? Like the Palestinians really have the real apartheid state because there's no Jews living under Palestinian rule. No, man, you got to have a second-class citizenship to be able to have an apartheid state. What the fuck do you mean? That's an ethno-state, you fucking idiot. You're confusing the ethno-state with apartheid state, which would still be ridiculous if you were like Palestine as an ethno-state. That'd be so funny.
All of these myths have consequences. All of these lies have consequences.
Oh, that's it? That's all he got? Okay, that was so bad. Okay, fuck him. All right, I'm done. I'm done for today. I can't do this any longer. I'm so done. I'm so fucking done. Bantustans are ethno-states, Ben Shapiro. Yeah, technically. He's like, a Bantustan, where black people are supposed to live in South Africa, would be an apartheid state. Why? Or because technically there's no white people living there. Oh, okay, thanks, man. Got it. The real ethno-state, or the real problem in South Africa were the Bantustans, but not because it was immoral, but because like white people couldn't live there. Didn't want to, but fucking so stupid.